Curran Holman from the J2C show, and this morning we've got you our update for our fantasy football league. It was a wild week one. A lot of players that were expected to do good did not do well, and so we had kind of a skew results because of that. But we do have our results for week one. And right now, we'll just go and say it. I did win week one against JT. So right there, I proved the week one status. Looking into that matchup, again, my team, welcome to Pond City. Welcome to Pond City against Yo Bella Check Yourself. And my highest player, I had a pretty solid lineup, except for my tight end, and Des Bryant had a couple catches, but he only had 43 yards, so that's 4 points. But other than that, straight through the board, Marcus Mariota, he got me 18 points, just about almost 19 points. James White was kind of low for me at 7, but Montgomery had 15. Jordy Nelson had 13, so Green Bay offense did pretty well against Seattle, or they had those two big plays. Ebron, Des Bryant didn't do so well this week. DeAndre Hopkins was another big player. He had 11.5 points. My kicker, Kyle Forbath, he put in 11. So it was a good one. Or Kai Forbath put in 11 points for me as well. And I think kicking is really the solid spot here. And I've had the kicking spot be one of my most consistent scoring players here on fantasy. I had Steven Gostkowski last year for New England, and he was almost a 15-point average on, you look at that offense, all those field goals and extra points, they add up. But Forbath put in 11 for me, which was big. And then Carolina Panthers defense, again, they played San Francisco, so it was a favorable matchup to me. But that was a big one. They got me 15 points. Other than that, looking at my bench, Phillip Rivers, I just added him. That was, I think, going to be a good pickup for me, other than the fact he had an interception. He had a pretty solid game with almost 200 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. So the Chargers are going to be good this year. I think they've got a lot of talent on offense. They've got a young defense that they have quite a bit of talent. You got Joey Bosa down there on the defensive end. You've got Melvin Ingram at linebacker. And then on offense, you've got Melvin Gordon, who had a big game. You have Rivers. You have Keenan Allen. They've got a lot of talent on offense. Now the line is where the defensive line is good, but the offensive line needs a little help. But they played Denver, tough defensive team. Denver did win because they blocked a field goal at the end last night on the Monday Night Football. But I think Phillip Rivers is a good, solid backup until Trubisky. Trubisky, I've got high hopes for him, but he probably won't see any playing, especially since Glennon did okay for Chicago. It'll be a couple weeks before they nod to Trubisky. But Phillip Rivers is my boy here, good backup, and that's kind of my big spot. I want to get a good, solid quarterback. So if Mariota and Rivers, that's a big, solid spot for me. Adrian Peterson, I'm dropping him. He's not. I just don't see him fitting in an offense. I didn't think it was a good fit for him beginning when he signed with New Orleans, and especially the way they like to pass the ball and use pass-catching running backs. Peterson's not that, and they proved it last night. And again, it's game 1 in the season, so maybe they'll increase his role, but I'm just not confident with him, and especially the way they use him. He's just not a good fit. It's kind of like that same fit DeMarco Murray was with Philadelphia. That's that same kind of scheme that they're doing, and Peterson's just not going to thrive in that. Now, DeMarco Murray of Tennessee is a perfect fit. Power run, get him in lanes, let him use that power run that he does so well. So that's a good fit for him. But for Adrian Peterson, it's just not. Sanu, I'm still debating on him. I'll see if I move him or not. He's not a bad. He gets a lot of. See, PPR, he would be great. I have him in another league for PPR, and he's doing pretty solid. But this league we're doing is not PPR. So that's going to narrow it down because it's all about yards. It's about yards, touchdowns. It's a little bit more simple, but also you're not going to get as high of points. So I'm going to leave him off, and I'll decide on him in the next couple of days. Tyreek Hill, he's going to be a starter for me next week. He's going to fill in for Hopkins because he's just so explosive. And against New England, he had a big game, 20 points. He had 133 reception yards and a touchdown. And you can also include him in the running game. He only had 5 yards, but he might see some more carries in the season. So we'll see if he does that. But again, he's going to be a starter for me. He's just so good. Corey Davis has potential. He had some big catches against Oakland, so I'm excited to see what he does, especially in his first game. He'll get some more reps, and he'll be probably one of the favorite targets other than probably Rashard Matthews and Eric Decker. I mean, that receiving core is going to be good for Tennessee, and it gives a lot of weapons to Mariota. So that could help me, and not just in case of Corey Davis, but also in the case of Marcus Mariota. So, and then my last one, Chris Carson. Chris Carson played well Sunday. He looked good against the Green Bay Packers. They didn't use him quite a bit in the second half because they were behind, and they tried to get something going through the passing game to try to catch up because you had Jordy Nelson and Ty Montgomery scored touchdowns, again, two starters for me on my team. But Chris Carson, and with Thomas Rawls still lingering back, I believe they said he's ready to go this week, so they might use Rawls. But I expect Chris Carson to get a lot of carries this year. I think he's more productive than Eddie Lacy. He's a better fit for that line. And he's explosive. He's young, he's explosive, and he's got that power game. So he's a downhill runner. He can catch at it. I mean, he can do it all. So Chris Carson, I expect him to get quite a bit of carries this year. So I think he only had about 5 points. But for his first game and kind of not using him just for the first half he had all those points. And he had a 30-yard gain. I mean, they can use him in the pass. So he's going to be a productive back for Seattle. And I think he's going to be someone that maybe in a bye week situation could be starting for me. But for JT didn't have a bad week. Not too bad of a week. Derek Carr did well for him. Gurley did well. Gurley finally started getting LA. What a game they had, winning 46-9. So they came out of nowhere. And again, they played Indianapolis. Indianapolis, not a great defensive team. They showed it. And then the offense not there. They're really nothing without Andrew Luck. So, I mean, with that, I mean, they're just they're not a good team. The Colts are just not good. And so Gurley able to take care of that. He had a good matchup. He does it all for that Rams team. And you know what? I'm surprised, but Goff looked pretty good. He made some big throws. He made some quality, and he was connecting with his throws. Again, playing the Colts defense, not the greatest, so we'll see when he plays a better team. But compared to last year, miles ahead of what he did. So he's looking better. He's looking more comfortable, and we'll see. He had Derek also on JT's team. He had Eric Decker, Brandon Cooks. Cooks did okay. Bennett, not so great. Jonathan Stewart had a big game. Matt Bryant for Atlanta had a good kicking game. And then you had Vikings defense, who they won, but against New Orleans, that's kind of a risky play. So we'll see how it goes in week 2, but that's the matchup between me and JT. And so it was good to get a win against him week 1. Now, looking at through our rest of our schedule for week 1, these are our results. So with me getting the win, the next win goes to the Sacco, Turner Edwards. He had 83 points to my little brother, Motor City White Buffalo's Henry with 55 points. And then next down there, we had another good outing for the one guy without CTE, and my cousin Mark over there in California. He put up just almost 97 points, so pretty close. And he beat Lindsay Luna with the Rolling Blunts, and she put up 55 points. Now she kind of had a rough week because again she forgot to take out Julian Edelman, who was her starting receiver. And on the bench, she had quite a bit of points. Chris Thompson had 12 points. LeGarrette Blount. I mean, I expected her to start LeGarrette Blount for week 1. Actually, let's see. I think she did for week 1. No, she had him out. And that's a lot of points there she left on the bench. Because she had Terrence West as well with 14 points. So she's got a lot of gameplay going on, but it's all in her bench. If she put it in her bench instead of her starters, she would have had a good week. But I think she'll bounce back. She's got she's got a Green Bay defense who did well. Mason Crosby. She's got a lot on this Green Bay team for the defense and special teams and a good setting. She's got Tom Brady. I think he'll bounce back in week 2. She's going to get rid of Julian Edelman, either drop him or trade him, and depending on who she can get a trade for him. But most likely we're going to have to drop him and pick someone else. She's got Andy Dalton on the bench, and Andy Dalton, he had a bad week 1. -3 points. Just did not look good in that game against Baltimore. That defense just really shut him down, and it was surprising. They have a lot of weapons on that Cincinnati team. They were not able to get anything going. LeGarrette Blount had 10 points. He had 46 yards and a touchdown. A receiving touchdown, but again, a good solid outing for him. And that Philadelphia team's looking pretty good. Of Carson Wentz taking the reins, they could be a contender here, or at least for a playoff spot. That could bring the Eagles back there in the playoff spot. Dallas looked good, so that's going to be an interesting rivalry matchup between those two. Chris Thompson for Washington had a good outing, 52 yards receiving. A lot of it out of the backfield, 52 yards for a touchdown. And then Terrence West had 14 points. So, again, I think she'll probably add some starters here. But we'll see what she does. But the Julian Edelman factor and just kind of the management of week 1 cost her. So, looking back into it, so again, that was about just about a 41-point difference. And then our top scorer, and actually probably our top matchup for this week, we had the old man wins again, Rory, over there, good friend of mine from when I started doing radio over in LeGrand at KEOL, and he put up 125 points. He had a big outing. Most of it came from the back of Kareem Hunt, so 40 points. Right there, he had that big game last Thursday night against New England, 148 yards rushing, 1 touchdown, and then he had that 1 fumble, so actually could have been more. But then he had 98 yards receiving with a couple of scores as well. So big game for Kareem Hunt, 40 points, which is kind of unheard of in these kind of situations and these kind of games. But he also had a good game from Suckup, the kicker for Tennessee. And then Jaguars defense, 28 points, 1 interception, 3 fumbles. They even had a touchdown. And again, they played Houston, so Deshaun Watson now is going to be the starter for the Texans. They already made the call. If he's ready to go for practice Thursday, he had a finger injury on his throwing hand. But if he's ready to go, they'll start him. And we'll see if Houston's able to because Houston's got a good defense. And if they are able to get the offensive end going, they could be a solid team here. So I think they'll just take some time, and we'll see how the Texans do. But Jaguars look good defensively. They were able to fluster the Texans. And with that, they were able to score big on fantasy. I mean, 10 sacks. That speaks for itself right there. On the bench, Golden Tate for Rory had 11 points, a good game, and then Blake Bortles only 10, which is kind of low for a quarterback. So, not much. I mean, most of it, his starters played well, and it came from 3 spots because he had Jordan Reed at tight end for Washington, only 3.5 points. Terrell Pryor, 6 points. Julio Jones, kind of low. He had 66 yards receiving, but we'll see him get better production, so I think that'll be a better pickup. And then Lamar Miller is a decent back for the Texans, had 9.5 points. and he had Big Ben with just about 16 points. So he had 125 again. Most of it was from carry. You take about 20, and it's about normal. And there's actually a normal performance of Kareem Hunt would have made this a closer matchup because he went against Parker with team. And now he got away with this. It's team fuck you, but it's spaced in each letter. So instead of saying fuck you in 2 words, it's F space U space C space K. So he got away with doing it that way. So he had a really good week, actually. Other than the fact that his tight end Greg Olsen, who's usually a pretty solid player at tight end, he had a rough week against San Francisco. But his big results, and now this will be the interesting thing with his team in this whole Ezekiel Elliott mess, because now that they got now that they've got the law system involved into this, now Ezekiel Elliott's apparently he's able to play. So it started out, there was the domestic violence accusation of Ezekiel Elliott. So that resulted in a 6-game suspension. Well, he appealed. And he lost the appeal in the NFL. But then they went and did it into court. And then now, so with that, he was able, due to the timing of the court and everything else, that he was allowed to play in game 1. So he had 14 points. So he had a big game 1. However, now the NFL, because what the court did is they came in and they gave a restraining or an injunction that allowed Elliott to play this season. So no games suspended. But now the NFL is appealing that in the court. So this whole mess, and it's again just like the Tom Brady thing, and now it's a lot serious. It's more serious than the Tom Brady thing, because again, Tom Brady was getting suspended for deflating footballs. So that's, really not an issue at all. But this one's about domestic violence, which is a serious issue. So it's just the process, and it's, again, another big mess here in the NFL. And so we'll see how that plays out. But as of now, Ezekiel Elliott can play, and so he'll be a solid starter in the fantasy. And that's where I'm getting on with all this, is that he's able to be on Parker's team as a starter, and he'll be productive this season because they're going to lean on him quite a bit. So he'll be in the lineup. On the bench for Parker, Eagles defense, 22 points. Both his defenses went big. Eagles always have in the last couple seasons have a really good defense, so that's a good pickup. But he also had the Rams. Rams always have a good defense. Now the offense was able to play a part of that, but the defense, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble. They had 2 touchdowns. So again, a little high for game 1, but I think once you see the season move on, teams are going to figure out these defenses better. They're going to read the coverages better. Again, there's a lot of young players starting for these teams against these experienced defenses. So I think it's going to play out, and you're not going to see defenses, a lot of them scoring 20 to 30 points. It's really not the case. Usually on typical weeks, your highest defensive teams are going to be in that 15 to 20 range. A lot of them are going to probably be sitting maybe around 7 to 10 normal, and then the bad ones are going to be below 5. So that's usually how you'll see how these play out. But so that was our biggest matchup. Again, that was Parker and Rory, 125-103. So again, he still won by just about 22 points. But really big performances kind of just lifted him on that one. Next one, we had our highest one. Now we have our lowest win. And this matchup went 65-54. My older brother, Charlie, team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of an auto-pick team, and he's made some changes against the Mississippi Motherfuckers, Nick Creason's teams. And This one a little bit different, a little bit lower, 65-54. Looking at this matchup, big scores for Charlie. Mike Glennon had 12.5. Melvin Gordon had just about 14. And then he had Corey Coleman here with just about 11.5. So big performances out of there. Other than that, team not doing so well. Manuel Sanders, Mike Thomas, not productive in week 1. CJ Anderson did okay. Here on the Mississippi Motherfuckers team, Cam Newton was the big one for Nick. He had 13 points. Le'Veon Bell only put up about 4.5. Tevin Coleman for Atlanta put up just under 6. And then Randall Cobb had 8.5. And so a lot of lower scores here. Not much double-digit scoring for Nick. And that kind of played an effect. His best scorer here was Carson Wentz, 18, just under 19 points. And so that was his biggest score. And that hurt him on the bench. Charlie, on the other hand, not much happening on this bench, especially with Winston having the bye because of the suspension of the game because of Hurricane Irma down there. So nothing happening really down there in those Florida teams. And we'll see how they move those, and we'll see if they're able to get things going. But again, terrible storm down there in Florida, and we wish them all the best. And hopefully that's not going to turn out too bad. But again, it's a nasty storm down there, and it's just wreaking havoc down there in Florida. So now we get back into our results. Legions of 12 get their win. Daniel got his win over Team Milk Moose, Michael, cousin down there in California. And looking at this, Sam Bradford was the star for Daniel's team. He was even a win. He was able to win this, even having a player go negative at the receiver spot. And Crowder, Terrence Williams had 5.5. Jason Witten had just under 12. So Jason Witten again, kind of the big target there for Dallas in the passing game. I need Prescott to start throwing a little bit more to Bryant and a little bit less to Witten is what I need. But Dalvin Cook had a big game for Minnesota over New Orleans. 127 yards rushing, 10 yards receiving, gave him just under 14 points. On the bench, we had one scorer, Charles Clay, tight end. He had 11.3, so just under 11.5. And so the tight end position is looking pretty good for Daniel right now, and Witten and Clay. But again, this is all week 1, so we'll see how this one turns out. And then over there for Michael's team, big scorer was Tyrod Taylor for Buffalo. He had just under 19 points. And then Graham Gano for Carolina had a good kicking game, 11 points. But Allen Robinson's hurt, and we'll see if he's able to come back for the Jaguars. But that was kind of the weak spot there, and Jamal Charles not doing well. So, and the Chiefs defense. But then you expect the Chiefs defense to not put up a lot of fantasy points against New England offense. So that gave us a 85-66 score there in that matchup. As we look into our last few matchups, we only have our last matchup here. So again, we have 14 teams, so we have 7 matchups each week. And the last one, Car Ramrod, did not get out of the grasp of Mouse Rat. Mouse Rat wins this one 76-67. Mouse Rat team by Colby out there in Pendleton, good friend of mine. And Car Ramrod by JC, not having the greatest turn. He had his big lineup was Drew Brees. He had 15, just about 15.5. And then Adam Thielen for Minnesota had a big game last night. 157 yards receiving against a pretty bad Saints defense. He had 15.5 points there. But Jimmy Graham did not do anything for him in Seattle. Had just .80. Patriots defense, again, as you saw Thursday night, that defense didn't put much. He had Lutz, the kicking. I've got Lutz in another league, and Lutz had a good game last night. A couple of field goals there for New Orleans. Fitzgerald, his most productive receiver. And now the big one is he was able to get the first pick of the draft. And he has David Johnson, who might be out for a while. It looks like he dislocated his left wrist, and Johnson will miss approximately 8 to 12 weeks. So right there, most of the season, we aren't going to see him until possibly at the very latest, week 13, week 14. So that's a big blow for JC to have a player like that magnitude, go out. So we'll see who he is able to throw in there. But looking at his bench, he's got another guy on IR in Joe Williams. So it might be a tough one. He's got two guys in IR on his bench. He's going to have to kind of sit through and try to find something or try to make some trades here. But really that running back position, he's got Eddie Lacy, only .3, only 3 rushing yards. So he's got some off seasons, or not off season, but some waiver wire and some trading to do to try to build this team up in here in this league. Or there's the other fact of you just let it sit and, kind of call your season. It's only week 1, but you're going to find a lot of guys here that just come out of nowhere and try to grasp them, try to get them for a couple weeks. Maybe if they burn out, then trade them. So there's a lot you can do. So it's only week 1. There's a lot of time. Mouse Rat, big scorers, Aaron Rodgers, LaShawn McCoy. Rodgers just about 16.5. McCoy just under 16. And that was about it. I mean, Keenan Allen had a decent 9.5. And then Marshawn Lynch at the flex, 9, just over 9. And then Bills defense and Blair Walsh also put up about 9 points. So pretty consistent through the league. Not many big scores, but consistently able to rack up just enough points to get it. And that's all about. It's all about getting wins. Don't know how you do it. You can win by 1 point. You can win by 30 points. A win is a win. Doesn't matter how bad it is. So that's our week 1 results here for our Fantasy Football League at the J2C show. And then I'm going to go ahead and just give you our week 2 lineup as we get ready for the opening week. And it starts again. We'll have the Thursday night matchup as well. But this is our week 2 matchup. We'll see if there's any big things, but right now it's going to be scheduled. I will be going against Henry in the Motor City White Buffaloes. JT will be taking on Mark. Then Turner will be taking on Rory. That'll be an interesting match. Lindsay will be taking on Charlie. Parker takes on Daniel. Nick will take on JC. And then Michael will be taking on Colby. And we've got one matchup of undefeateds, and then the rest, and that is going to be Turner and Rory, and then all the other matchups are going to be 1-0s versus 0-0 or 0-1s, and we've got one matchup of 0-1s versus 1-0. So. Or 0-1s versus 0-1s. So again, week 1, kind of our run through. We're still waiting for week 2, and we'll see how again couple of names started popping out after week 1 of picking up Jared Goff, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was one guy that he was the target for Goff in that game. Now Cooper Kupp, if you don't know him. He had a big career out at Eastern Washington, was a predominant receiver for the Eagles, and I got the pleasure of watching him get touchdowns over the Oregon State Beavers when they beat them a couple of years ago. And that was actually the last year Vernon Adams, the old quarterback for his senior year at Oregon, played at Eastern Washington. So that matchup with Adams to Kupp, I remember that one very well. But he's a really good receiver here. So we'll see if he's able to be a more consistent receiver. He had a good preseason, got hurt, but he's back, and he played a good game last Sunday for the Rams. So we'll see if he gets more into and I think they will. With Sammy Watkins, he could be a really good option. People are going to be targeting Watkins. He'll be open, and he'll be making some big plays. So that's our fantasy update here on the J2C show. We will see you guys next time, and we will see you guys later. So have a good one. Kurt Holman from the J2C show.